How much does being constantly absent from work cost your employer? Even worse, what is the price of being present at work but not productive? South African businesses are losing up to 89 billion rand a year due to unproductive employees. That's according to new research by Momentum Corporate. Let's speak to Head of MMI Investment Strategy. That's Rowan Burger on this. Rowan, thank you so much for coming on to News Hour. Why are South Africans skipping work so much?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily that we're skipping work so much. This is a phenomenon around the world. We tend to focus a lot on people being absent from work, and that's perfectly natural. You do get sick. But the problem is really, in addition to those lost hours for an employer, it's also people are at work, but they're not fully engaged. And we call that sort of presenteeism, which is effectively that you're not fully there. There's certain things that are distracting you, much like I didn't get presenteeism out right at that moment. And these reduce your productivity and really hit a business's bottom line. So we've been trying to do some work to try and put numbers behind this phenomenon.
We'll get back to the numbers in a moment. I'm interested in the distractions. Have you been able to come up with a list of the main ones?
Absolutely. You can really sort of group them into sort of two groupings. They're the physical and the sort of illness sort of side of things, psychological issues, and then issues such as hypertension, blood pressure, those sorts of concerns, and then your relationship type issues with your colleagues, with your boss, with your family members. And one that's really come to the fore in recent years, which really prompted our research in this space, was financial stress. We're seeing that all over the place. And in particular, people are really worried about their finances. And that's coming through in that people are losing up to a quarter of their working month worrying about their financial situation.
Do we then lump these people who are battling illness and stress together with people who are unproductive simply because, as you and I well know, there are people who just do not come into work with an intention to work?
I think these are really issues that are often outside an employee's control. Mm-hmm. And so employers really do need to step in and assist where they possibly can. Often people look at, without looking at the numbers, they don't understand that there is actually a bottom line positive impact for these sorts of interventions. So we're not talking about lazy workers who potentially need to be incentivized in a different way. This is making sure that people have simple budgets, for example, and we find that people with budgets are financially well, and then that relieves that financial stress.
I can hear a lot of people
things
saying,
like that.
All I need is, I'm glad someone is finally saying that my employer must pay me better. Is it as easy as companies paying workers more?
No, this isn't so much an issue of paying more. You'll well know as soon as you get a little bit extra, you spend it almost immediately. This is about creating a financial discipline. So understanding how much is coming in, how much is going out, and really how much you should be putting away for emergencies. Because most people are living from hand to mouth from day to day, but it's those emergencies, the loss of a loved one, a medical emergency, something happens to your car, and it's those financial emergencies that just tip you over the edge, and that creates the large problem.
What about the mental health issues then, depression, stress and the like? What can companies do to intervene as far as that's concerned to ensure that not only do they look out for productivity, but that the particularly troubled worker is assisted and then brought back on track as soon as possible?
You'll see lots of companies have what they call well-being or wellness programs, and so these are employee assistance programs. In our industry, we're great with acronyms, so EAP programs, which is really somebody there, a professional who's on a phone call that you can just call them and address these sorts of issues. So those are softer sort of issues. But again, with a lot of knowledge workers, it's really important because in the current times, it is very stressful. Times are tight. And it's lots of these sorts of things that build up to stress that leave you sitting at the office, not really working and not really giving your all. And that has a financial implication on the employer as well.
But speaking of stress, we're also going through a very tough time economically. A lot of people worried about losing their jobs, and I'd imagine that also then leads to some people not being as productive as they should be because of the stress.
Absolutely. So in our research, we looked at this across industries. You've just run a piece on the gold industry looking at wage negotiations. It's the mining sector and the electricity sector that seem to have the highest prevalence of this presenteeism phenomenon that we're talking about. So certainly there's a correlation, and a strong correlation, between industries that are in trouble and these stresses. And so what we're trying to do here is create an awareness amongst employers as to the impacts on their employees and some of these interventions that should hopefully help their bottom line at the end of the day.
I'm interested in this figure of 89 billion rand that's lost annually by companies. How is such a figure calculated?
It's quite difficult to work out how to come up with the number, but basically, for every 1 day that people are not at work through absenteeism, there's roughly 2.5 days that is lost to that employer through this factor of presenteeism. So we then try to work out, if we could solve some of this, how would that impact South Africa's bottom line as a country? And so roughly speaking, we get about 400 Rand per person of profit per hour worked. And so we just extrapolated that by the number of workers in South Africa to get to this 89 billion Rand number. It is natural that you would worry, and so what we're talking about here is the excessive worry. So we think between absenteeism and presenteeism, we're losing about 60 billion Rand a year as an economy in South Africa. And allied to that 60 billion Rand, assuming that's all profit, that's tax of roughly 20 billion. That's the shortfall that SARS has had. So these are some of these quick wins that our president was talking about, count us in. You know, the sorts of things that employers can do that will make a difference, that we believe very quickly will have a bottom line impact on our economy and get us out of this recession.
And just in terms of accuracy of those figures, I'm curious, because you and I are speaking tonight about momentum research. How many companies actually spend time looking into how productive workers are, the reasons, and just how much it's costing them?
There's a lot of research that we put into this work, and we do it in conjunction with UNISA. So, we've analysed all companies' balance sheets on SIPSI. We've then extrapolated this off the large number of people who we insure. So, while it's not an exhaustive study, we're very confident this is quite accurate.
Thank you.
The number is a bit conservative. We think it is probably bigger than this, but just running on profit, we think that we're pretty much there.
Right, Rowan, let's leave it there for today. That was the head of MMI Investment Strategy, Rowan Burger, speaking to us there about new research that they've put together on absenteeism and presenteeism. Coming up,